In the dead of night, a golden retriever puppy named Milo stood guard by the crib of 6-month-old Noah, a baby paralyzed for months with no hope of recovery. Doctors had given up. His parents were crumbling under despair, but Milo sensed something. No one else could. When he let out a low, urgent whimper and nudged the crib, what happened next defied all logic. A tiny twitch of Noah's fingers, the first movement in months. Was this a miracle unfolding, or just the beginning of something even greater? The house held its breath as the impossible began to stir. The nursery glowed softly under the faint light of a nightlight, casting gentle shadows across the room where Noah lay still in his crib. His tiny chest rose and fell with steady breaths, but his legs remained motionless, just as they had for months. No kicking, no wiggling toes, no sign of life below his waist. The doctors had been clear with his parents, Olivia and Ryan. There was no explanation for Noah's paralysis, no treatment, no cure. Outside the nursery door, the weight of that truth pressed down on the couple as they sat on the couch in the dim living room. Olivia clutched a worn baby blanket to her chest, its faint newborn scent a cruel reminder of the days when Noah had stretched and squirmed in her arms. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she glanced at Ryan, who stared blankly at the floor, his hands clasped tightly together. "I do not know how much longer I can do this," she whispered, her voice fragile as if speaking too loudly might shatter what little resolve she had left. What if he never moves again? Ryan exhaled heavily, dragging a hand across his face. "We have to keep hoping," he said, but his words lacked conviction. Hope felt like a fraying thread, slipping through their fingers with every passing day. At their feet lay Milo, their golden retriever puppy, his warm brown eyes darting between his owners and the nursery door. He had always been drawn to Noah, often curling up beside the crib as if he understood something was wrong. But tonight, Milo was different. His body was tense, his tail still, his gaze fixed on the nursery with an intensity that made Olivia pause. "At least he loves Noah," she murmured, trying to find comfort in the thought. "I just wish love could fix this." Unbeknownst, to her, love was about to do something extraordinary, something that would rewrite their story in ways they could not imagine. The night stretched on, heavy with silence. Olivia and Ryan remained on the couch, too drained to speak, too restless to sleep. Their days had become an endless cycle of doctor visits, internet searches, and prayers that seemed to echo into a void. In the nursery, Noah slept peacefully, his small hands resting near his chest, fingers slightly curled. His legs, as always, lay still beneath the blanket. Milo stayed close, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes never left the baby. For weeks he had refused to leave Noah's side. At first, Olivia and Ryan chalked it up to instinct, a puppy bonding with a child. But lately, Milo's behavior had shifted. He was not just staying near Noah, he was watching him, waiting for something. Then it happened. Milo stood abruptly, his ears twitching. He paced in tight circles near the crib, glancing at Noah, then at the door, then back again. A low whimper escaped his throat as he placed his front paws on the edge of the crib, nudging the bars with his nose. In the living room, Olivia's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice tinged with unease. Ryan nodded, already rising to his feet. Yes, it sounded like Milo. They hurried toward the nursery, their hearts pounding, with a strange mix of apprehension and curiosity. When they reached the doorway, they saw Milo standing on his hind legs, pressing his nose against the crib's bars, his tail giving the faintest wag. He let out another soft whimper, but it was not Milo that froze them in place, it was Noah. Noah's fingers twitched. It was so slight, so subtle, they might have missed it if they had not been staring so intently. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she grabbed Ryan's arm. "Look at his hand," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ryan's eyes widened as he leaned closer. Then it happened again. A tiny, deliberate curl of Noah's fingers, as if reaching for something unseen. For the first time in months, A spark of hope flickered in Olivia's chest, fragile but undeniable. For months, they had watched their son lie still, trapped in a body that refused to move, while specialists offered nothing but grim predictions. Now, as Noah's fingers twitched again, more certain this time, something seemed to awaken inside him. Ryan's voice was barely a whisper as he spoke his son's name, Noah. His hands shaking as he reached toward the crib, terrified to believe what he was seeing. Noah's eyes remained closed, his breathing steady, but that small movement persisted. Milo whimpered again, pressing his head against the crib as if urging the moment forward, his tail wagging slowly. "Noah, baby, can you hear us?" Olivia knelt beside the crib, her fingers brushing against her son's hand. She needed to feel it, to know it was real. Then it happened. Noah's fingers curled around hers, the touch faint but unmistakable. A gasp tore from her lips as she turned to Ryan, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Did you see that?" Ryan nodded, his own eyes glistening, his expression caught between disbelief and raw emotion. "I saw it," he said, his voice cracking. In that moment, the weight of their despair, the sleepless nights, the endless worry, the suffocating helplessness, faded into the background. All that mattered was their son, who had not moved in months, showing signs of life. Milo let out a small, excited bark, his paws tapping against the crib's bars. His bright eyes stayed locked on Noah, as if he knew more was coming, and he was right. Just as Olivia reached for her phone to call a doctor, Noah's entire hand lifted. Slow, shaky, but with a quiet strength they had not seen since before the paralysis took hold. A sob broke from Olivia as she covered her mouth, watching in disbelief. Ryan gripped the edge of the crib, steadying himself as his breath hitched. Noah's fingers stretched toward Milo, as if sensing the puppy's unwavering presence. The companion who had never left his side. Then, impossibly, Noah's legs twitched, just the smallest shift beneath the blanket. But it was there. Olivia's heart pounded as she stared, waiting for it to happen again. It did, stronger this time. Everything they had been told, every hopeless prognosis, every sleepless night spent fearing the worst, it all dissolved in the face of this moment. Noah was fighting his way back, and it had started with Milo. Ryan sank onto the floor beside the crib, his eyes fixed on Noah's legs as they shifted again. "This cannot be real," he murmured, though he desperately wanted it to be. Olivia dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she touched her son's cheek. His skin was warm, his face peaceful, his eyelids fluttering as if stirring from a long sleep. Milo stood on his hind legs, tail wagging faster now, letting out another soft bark as he nudged the crib, his excitement uncontainable. "Noah," Olivia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The baby stirred, letting out a tiny whimper that sent a fresh wave of hope crashing over them. His fingers curled again, his legs shifted, and then his eyes opened, deep brown and filled with sleepy innocence, unaware of the miracle unfolding around him. His gaze drifted to Milo, and the puppy responded with a joyful bark, his tail a blur of motion. Then, in a moment that stopped their hearts, Noah lifted his hand, weak, trembling but deliberate, and reached for Milo. Olivia's sob echoed through the room as Ryan turned away, wiping his eyes, unable to hold back his own tears. Noah's tiny fingers brushed against Milo's golden fur, and the puppy leaned into the touch, pressing his head against the baby's hand as if he had been waiting for this all along. For the first time in months, Olivia and Ryan felt something other than despair. They felt hope, real, tangible hope. As Noah's fingers curled into Milo's fur, weak but determined, Olivia whispered, "He is moving, Ryan. He is really moving." Ryan nodded, his voice unsteady. "I know." He reached for Noah's leg, hesitating before touching it, and felt another faint twitch beneath his fingers. A shaky laugh escaped him as he looked at Olivia. tears streaming down his face. Noah blinked up at them, his eyes carrying the same curiosity they remembered from before everything changed. He was not just reacting, he was reaching, feeling, fighting his way back. Milo circled the crib, barking softly, his joy infectious. It was as if he had known this moment was coming, as if he had been waiting for Noah to wake up. "How is this possible?" Ryan asked, his voice raw. Olivia had no answer, but she did not need one. For months they had been drowning in helplessness, clinging to a hope that felt more like a cruel illusion. Now they were witnessing something that defied every expectation. She leaned closer, brushing her fingers across Noah's cheek. "You are so strong, baby," she whispered. Noah let out a soft coo, and his leg shifted again, this time a real, unmistakable movement. Ryan gripped the crib, his knuckles white, as he murmured, "This is a miracle." The days that followed were a blur of emotion, hope, relief, and gratitude they had not felt in months. Noah's movements grew stronger each day, his fingers gripping more firmly, his legs kicking softly. Beneath his blanket, his doctors were baffled, calling it an unexplainable recovery, a phenomenon they could not fully understand. But Olivia and Ryan knew the truth. It was not just chance or medicine. It was love, a love embodied by a golden retriever puppy who had never left Noah's side, who had sensed something they could not, who had nudged them toward a miracle they had stopped believing in. Sitting in the nursery one evening, Olivia held Noah in her arms, his tiny body warm against hers. Milo lay curled up beside them, his head resting on her knee. She ran her fingers through his soft fur, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved him," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. Milo let out a contented sigh, nuzzling closer as if he understood. In that moment, Olivia realized miracles do not always come in the forms we expect, not from doctors or science, but sometimes from the smallest, most unexpected places. Sometimes they come with 4 legs and a wagging tail, reminding us that love can move mountains, even when all hope seems lost. Never stop believing in the quiet power of love. It might just bring a miracle when you least expect it.